What does it look like to leave a 15-year corporate career and build something all the way new in midlife? I know what that's like. My guest did it today. She walked out, started her third career, and she runs it her own way. This is Jennifer Hardiman, and this one is for every woman who's been wondering if it's too late. Stay with me. Welcome back to the Shifted Podcast. I'm your host, Amira Davis. My guest today is Jennifer Hardiman. She's the founder and chief event officer of Fabuluxe Events. Jennifer spent 15 years in corporate before she walked away. Fabuluxe Events is her third career, and she calls it the most rewarding that she's ever done. Today, we're talking about what it actually looks like to change everything in midlife, what kept her corporate, what finally made her go, and what happens when you build something on your own terms with the team you actually protect. Jennifer, welcome to the Shifted Podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Before we go into anything else, we have a little ritual on this show. So we raise a glass, whatever you're drinking, whatever's in your hand, and then you tell me what your big win is for the week.
Hey, here's my Diet Coke. Everybody knows I drink a Diet Coke. My big win for the week is that I just finished my event season and I am getting my world back a little bit. We kind of compress everything into 6 months and then we regroup over the summer. And this is the first week of regrouping. So cheers to regrouping.
I love that. I'm drinking blue tea. It's actually called Blue Moon tea. It's really good. It's like a herbal tea and it's blue. So it's got some really cool things in there. But cheers to every woman who's decided that she was not done. So let's get into it. So let's start where you are right now. 2026
Okay.
is your 17th year. So
Yes.
doors open, teams in place. You're 17 years in. What does 17 years actually look like? So close to 20 from the inside.
It looks like a lot of blood, sweat, tears, joy, frustration, learning, crying, smiling, all of the things you can possibly feel, but it's the most rewarding and most amazing thing I've ever done.
What's the moment so far that told you that you made the right call in leaving corporate and doing what you're doing now?
I think there's two moments. One being that my son has memories of me being at all of his soccer games. That balance is really, really important. And in corporate, that wasn't always a possibility. And the other sort of moment is knowing I did this on my own and that I took nothing and I built it into something. I can't even describe what that feeling is, but knowing that I was able to do it, my husband was skeptical at first, wasn't quite sure this was all going to work out and all of the things. And now when he's out and about, he's bragging on me. And so that is a big moment. So I think personally, it was being able to be there for my kids. Professionally, it's that I built this thing and that I was able to do it on my own.
Did you ever have moments because I'm an entrepreneur myself and I left corporate in 2022. I think we talked about this on our first meeting. But
Yeah,
did you ever have moments in the very beginning where you were like, did I make the right decision? Was this the right thing to do?
every day. I mean, when you start something on your own, you kind of can't help but question yourself every day. Is it going to come? Did I do the right thing? Am I going to be able to help provide for my family? All of those things. But I took it one day at a time. When those thoughts would bog me down, it was one day at a time and celebrate one thing I did every day, whether it was update the website or meet someone for coffee or something like that. As long as I was doing one thing every day, I felt like at least progress was happening. But yeah, questioned every day, still questioned some days.
Yeah, I love that. So before that, you worked in corporate, and I want to make sure I get the
Mhm.
amount. How long were you in corporate?
So I was in the commercial real estate world for 15 years. And then prior to that, I was the office manager for a law firm. So you can put that all together and you realize I'm in my midlife world. So yeah, very different, but the same skill sets in some ways.
Yeah. So a lot of women listening know exactly what that looks like. And I think, especially I look at the younger generation, and a lot of
Yeah.
younger women actually are listening to the podcast, trying to get wisdom from what we're saying. And I know that the fear would have been, I know for me, 15, 20 years ago would have been, I can't do that. I've got a paycheck. My husband had benefits, so I think I was lucky in that sense,
Yeah.
but I had a significant paycheck. So I'm going to go out on my own. How do I know that it's going to work? And I think they think whatever changes they want to make, it's going to be hard even though they know they should. So tell me when you were in corporate and your life was ready to change, what was it costing you?
I mean, we had to make an entire lifestyle change. I had the same very well paying job. Thank goodness my husband had benefits. Also, I was kind of forced to make a change because real estate crashed. And so it was either find a way to make it on your own or I was going to have to start over in some way or another. But yeah, we downsized our home, we downsized our cars, we did a lot of things for me to be able to do this, and it was a leap of faith. I'm very blessed that I have a partner who understood that, and he did have benefits, and he was able to, continue to pay our bills even though our lifestyle changed. There wasn't an issue of, are we putting food on the table or not? And I fully
Yeah.
understand how blessed I am with that.
Yeah. I think my husband's the same way, and I think, my kids are older now, so I think when I left, they were in college or, out of college, but I think he also recognized, probably as your husband does, that, I was a salesperson, I was a marketing person, so I wasn't going to fail. It was just how long was it gonna take for me to reap any kind of benefits from what we were doing because, if I'm gonna do
Yeah.
something I said this to him when I left corporate, I said, "All right, if we decide this is what I'm gonna do, you have to let me do it, and if I do it, he knows that I'm all in." And he's like, "See what happens." So, I think it's hard unless you have somebody that's supportive for you.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah, I mean, the weird hours, playing things over in your head and rewriting and rebuilding and reprocessing, and he was great through all of that. And we have been able to reap the benefits as the years have gone on, but I intentionally kept things at a pace that would work with for my family too. So we were very intentional about that part of it as well.
Was there a specific moment when you were still working in corporate that you knew that you were ready to go?
Yeah, I remember it very clearly. We were closing on purchasing of a multifamily portfolio when I was in real estate, and it was Christmas Eve. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm wrapping presents, and the emails are flying because they wanted to get this closed before Christmas. And I thought to myself, this is insanity. No, I shouldn't even be worrying about these things on Christmas Eve. I need to be with my family. And that sort of flicked a button in my head. And I said, This is ridiculous. This is no way to live." Yeah.
You know, another thing that I always say is when I left for my own companies, I remember thinking to myself, the things that I didn't like I worked in senior living. So needing to make sure somebody moves in and it was working with people that had dementia, but to being the sales part, you need to make sure that, whatever night it is, whatever weekend it is makes sense. And so that I understood that. But I also remember thinking when we started D5 specifically, that once I start to get staff, I will remember the things that I didn't like or that I didn't think were fair. And I will do the opposite. Same thing with like my bosses, like the bosses that I thought were not the best. I will make sure that I do and teach in the things that we teach the opposite of what I've seen that made me wanna leave.
100%. I think about that all the time. What were the things that I learned that I didn't want to be? And what were the things that I learned that I wanted to be? And my team is an all female team. And one of the girls on my team is a mom. Two of my girls are engaged right now. And so I'm really aware of their life too. So I don't ever want to make them feel in a position where I did that one night where I'm wrapping presents at midnight and worried about emails. I swore I would never do that to people on my own team.
Okay. And so, did we talk about you capping the number of events
Hmm.
that you take on each year so that
Hmm.
it's possible for people to have their weekends with their
We
families?
do. Yeah.
Okay. And that's not like how a lot of businesses run. So, why did you build it like that?
I built it like that because, again, I'm very blessed in my husband, but also we're at a price point where the numbers work. So I know what our price point is for what our service is. And I know if I do X, Y, and Z number of events at this price point, that I'm making a certain amount of revenue and my team is paid and all of those things. So it wasn't necessarily about becoming the most wealthy event planner or the most famous or any of those things. There were a lot of decisions that went into that. And with some of our events, we work on them for a year, year and a half at a time. So it's a long lead up to the actual day. So with capping the number of events, I'm able to provide, and my team is able to provide top notch service to our couples as they're going through something super emotional and feeling all the feelings for a year. But it was, yeah, we looked at the numbers and it was really just intentional on what allows me to still be able to travel and do the things that I want to do. Also allows my team to have their days off and their weekends free as much as possible. But also everybody gets paid a fair wage too.
So, with that, that means you're pretty exclusive, I would think.
We are. We're very blessed in that regard as well. We tend to work with a certain budget for events. We do have some NDAs out there. We've worked with some professional athletes and things of that nature. But One thing I've learned is that they're all just people. They just want someone to take them through their special day and that they can all be in the moment. I don't do the $1,000,000 events. That's not me. He has some nice clients. Yeah.
Close to a million, but not quite a million. I gotcha.
Yeah, no, that's a once you hit 1,000,000, that's a whole different level. And that's just not my realm. And that's okay.
So what you described with, making sure they've got weekends off and being intentional about what you're doing, it's a different design entirely from, the hustle that I think we were taught. I graduated from high school in 1991 and we were taught you get a job, you
Yep.
work 9 to 5. If you want to get promotions, you work 9 to 9, like you do all that. And you neglect your life and you neglect a lot of other things. And I think we have recognized that. And I think we've been pretty intentional as a generation in
Hmm.
trying to do different, even though it's a little bit later in life, like, we're learning, like, "Hey, this wasn't the best. Let's try to change things."
I agree with that 100%. I mean, my mom is like, she was a working mom. All the movies growing up, we were like, you can be a working mom, you can do this, you can have the career, you can do all those things. But what nobody really understood was the toll that it takes on you personally, on your relationships and everything else. And I will be honest, when I turned 50, and even though I'd had my company for a while, but when I turned 50, a sort of a light bulb went off. And I was like, I don't know how to describe it unless you turn 50, but a light bulb went off. And I was like, you know what? There's so much more. I mean, even though my company was always intentional and all those things, I just felt like a switch happened even more so at that age. And you can't be all things to all people. And it's okay not to be all things to all people. And I
It
think our generation is really learning that now. I graduated high school in 1988, so same thing. Yeah.
and it's funny, like, my mom was, like, the Oprah generation, and so I remember coming home and watching Oprah, and I remember I'll never forget this. I don't know why it keeps popping back into my head, but her saying, "When I turned 40 or when I turned 50, I did X, Y, and Z." And I remember thinking, "Gosh, you're old. That's not gonna be me." But I feel
Right.
the same as you, like, when I turned 50, something shifted, and that's how a lot of the things I do now is obviously Amira evolved, but I've got, like, the Shifted podcast. Everything has shift in it because there really was some kind of shift, and I can't put
Mhm.
my finger on what it was, but it was just, like, that age, and I was like, "You know what? Life is way too short. There's so much more
Yep.
to life that we can get, and why not make the most of it?" And so I think it's just interesting, that dynamic, because I think a lot of women I'm noticing are talking and seeing the exact same thing.
Yeah. It was just almost like a light bulb went off. I mean, I don't wanna work every weekend. I wanna travel. My husband and I are dating again. The kids are in their 20s, you know? All of those things that you realize that are part of the second chapter of life or whatever you want to call it really became important, and we've really focused on making both of our careers in a way that we can enjoy what's next or the next chapter.
So I'm gonna follow your advice on this one because our youngest, I think I told you, is 23 years old, and he's
Yeah.
moving Saturday. And so last weekend and the weekend before, he was up at his new apartment getting things ready and stuff.
Yep.
And Sam and I are sitting on the sofa going, like, not the, I mean, he's not even around anyway, but it's just so weird because we actually know he's not coming back. And so, of course, last Saturday morning, I woke up crying. I was like, I want him to annoy me. And
Yeah.
he was going to come back in 2 days. I'm like, we got to figure out, like, each other again, because we never did. We got married when I was 18, 19 years old, and then we had kids and did whatever. So I'm like, "This is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be new."
It's fun. I mean, it took us a little while to find our rhythm, I'll be honest. Like we were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, now what?" Right?
Yeah.
And so we have this saying in our house that my sons Alex and Wesley, and we always say there was a Pete and Jen before you two, and there's going to be a Pete and Jen after you guys. And so we'll go on dates, and they're like, "Did you bring us leftovers or this, that, and the other thing?" We're like, "No, you guys are grown-ups now with grown-up jobs." But it did take a little while to find our rhythm again. But it's been really fun actually to go and do things and see things maybe through a more adult lens than when we first got together and appreciate things a little bit more.
I'm excited. I'll take your advice on that
Yeah,
one.
you definitely have to do it. We're not great at doing it every week, but we do try to, plan things and we'll just say to each other, "Hey, you want to go on a date this weekend?"
'Cause our dates in high school or in college were just him taking me for cheesesteaks at the sub shop at the bottom of the street. So I'm like,
Yeah.
we gotta do something different.
Now we have an older Jeep and we take it out and we ride along the beach for a while. That's an afternoon, and that's great. So it's just finding those simple things again that we like to do, walking around the mall or going to our favorite restaurants, even doesn't have to be five-star or anything. It just can be someplace that, oh, we had a great time when we were there last time. Let's go there again. But it's been a process. It's been evolving.
Everybody keeps trying to get us to move to Florida. Friends of ours just bought a home in Florida, and they're like, "You would love it here," and now you're saying
Yeah.
driving on the beach. I'm like, "That does sound really nice."
It really, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Florida's got its Florida issues. Don't I mean, Florida man, we all know all of that, but living
Yeah.
a mile and a half from the beach, not
Yeah,
gonna lie, is pretty great. And, sometimes when I've just had a stressful day, I'll just drive along the beach and just the water is just, ooh, there's something about that. Yeah.
same for me. So, what would you do if there's a woman listening right now who's thinking about leaving or thinking that it's too much?
Yes.
What would you say to her?
I would say it's not too much. I feel like anybody can follow your dream. But what I do think you need to do is before you just take a leap, at least have some sort of plan, whether it's the outline of a business plan and maybe you don't have the financials or anything all sorted out, but at least maybe some goals, maybe some outlines of what it is you want to accomplish. Also, like we talked about earlier, maybe make some things of what you don't want to be as a boss or as a leader or as a business owner. Because I find that that's just as helpful in weeding through the information. Knowing what you don't want can help you find what you want. And I think that's just as important. Start slowly. We had an agreement in my house that I started my company, and as soon as I could pay the bills without having to dip into household finances, then I would go full time. So you need to maybe make some sort of parameters on that. It took me a year. So my whole first year. And then once I could cover my overhead, then I, was able to go full time. That doesn't mean I was making a ton of money. I was paying the bills, but we just had that agreement in our house. So I worked two jobs for a while. I was building something and I was doing my corporate job just in order to pay the bills and to make that overhead. Again, I worked out of my house. I still do. There's ways to make it work so that that overhead isn't as crazy as you might think.
Was there a version of yourself that showed up that you didn't know was there once you moved into this 3rd career?
Yes, I was smarter than I realized. I was more confident than I realized. I was more creative than I realized. And a lot of the things I had learned in my corporate career, a lot of the project management skills, the people skills, things like that, were very easily transferable into what I do now. So, for someone who's maybe starting out, what are your strengths now and how can you transfer those skills into what you want to do? Planning an event is very much project management and logistics. For me, that made sense. But yeah, I learned I was a lot more smarter and a lot more resilient than I thought I ever was going to be. I think that was a surprise.
And we talk about mentorship and stuff a lot. And so you do some mentorship and consulting for women that are interested in something like that, correct?
Yeah, I do. And I do maybe two people, three people at a time. Again, very intentional. I don't just say, here's my mentor package. I get to know them on a consultation call, understand where they want to go, and find out what their goals are. I'm not going to tell you to use these systems because my systems may not work for you. It's not a one size fits all situation, but it's someone to help you feel accountable, to run ideas by, talk through scenarios, and then figure out maybe your next steps. But I'm not one of those sell a class people and one size fits all people. I just don't think that works.
I love that. And I always say this again, I think we're very alike in that sense, is I always say the things that I wish that I had is what I'm trying to do for women now.
Mhm.
Because, at 52, I mean, I can get advice and I am getting it's funny now that we've got more of a presence, I am getting more advice from people that I wouldn't have before, but I really could have used it 15, 20 years ago. And so
Exactly.
I noticed when I first started doing this, I was like, I'm, catering more to Gen X people, but I'm getting a lot more late 20s, early 30s who are like, no, give me the info so I can have it. And so I'm just realizing where
Mhm.
that, so I think that's great. And so you're also giving out for anybody that's listening, free 30-minute consulting session?
I am. So it's a good way just to get to know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be event business related, but obviously that's my niche. But just even to understand what it's like to start on your own or start from scratch, I'm happy. I always wanted to be one of those people I feel there's enough room for all of us in this world and in this business. And I'm not going to gatekeep because that's not fair. And we all have something to learn and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. So I'm happy to always talk to people and schedule that 30-minute call.
It takes a village, and I just think I've said this before, especially as women, if we just collaborate, we work together, we could do so much more, like, on a
Yes.
global market, I mean, talk to people in the UK and everywhere, if we just realize that, you know, we don't need to gatekeep, like, we were conditioned to think you need to gatekeep, and you really don't
Mhm.
do
You don't.
it that way.
And people who, the service I provide is something that you can get from probably 20 other people within a 5-mile radius of me. But what makes me me is my approach, my personality, the way I deal with my couples, the type of couples I attract. And I know I'm not for everybody and not everybody's for me. So once I had that sort of light bulb, then I took a little bit of stress off myself too, thinking, oh, why didn't I book this or why am I not doing that? But then I realized it has to be symbiotic. They're interviewing me and I'm interviewing them every time we talk to a new couple.
That's a hard concept, I think, to get across is recognizing and have people realize that the right people will come and you don't need to take every single thing that comes to you.
And every time I've taken something that's sort of a red flag about has
Yeah.
been a disaster. And
Yep.
I'm like, I should have listened to the voice in my head, you know? So I'm trying to be better about that. I think I'm much better about that now than I was in the beginning.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. Before we end, we always end with a journal prompt from my Shifted Self journal that I'm actually going to rename. It's not a journal prompt. We're not going to call it the Shifted Self journal. We're going to rename it the Shifted Self 90-day reset because it's more of a habit tracker.
Oh,
So
I love
we
that.
always have journal prompts, but do you have anything that you'd want to add as a journal prompt?
I would say I've been doing every day, I write down something I'm grateful for. It's 2
Mm,
sentences because
okay.
in the grand scheme of a day, we have all this chaos happening around us. But my today, it could be that I got to be on your podcast. Tomorrow's could be I finished a timeline for a client. But as long as you every day think of something positive and don't always focus on the negative, then I feel like it helps you make a shift in your mindset and that builds.
For sure. I've been listening to a lot of manifestation things that talk about that, and
Mhm.
gratitude is the biggest one. So you can also follow Jennifer and Fabulux Events on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Facebook.
We're there.
Your website is fabuluxeevents.com, and I'll put all that in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Anything you want to end with?
No, I appreciate that, ironically, we connected on social media about doing this. So, there is power in that. And I appreciate taking the time and being able to be part of your podcast. And, women got to stick together. And we
Yes,
can, like you said, we can do great things. And this is not the end. Midlife is not the end. I feel like it's just another beginning.
I agree. Well, as always, no neat wrap up here. Just another week, another layer. I'll be here until next time. And we're actually doing every week now instead of every other week because we've gotten a little bit busier. So I'm excited about that.